One of the common threads is self-talk. And I find that most people are so hard on themselves. They might have compassion for friends and everybody else saying, oh, no, you're fine. Oh, you did the best you could. Oh, my gosh. And they compliment other people, but they don't compliment themselves. And instead, it's as if they have a cat of nine tails that they use on their back to beat themselves up with horrible physical scars, but they're doing this in their mind. And so they leave these mental scars that they inflict upon themselves because they don't know how to do proper self-talk.
Many people want to navigate life with peace and joy, but struggle to connect to their intuition. They find themselves overwhelmed, burned out, and frustrated. My name is Francesca Phillips, and I'm obsessed with spirituality and psychology and how the two can intersect to help you live a successful and intuitive life. I believe each of us can accomplish amazing things through balance and healthy habits instead of burnout. Consider this your go-to resource for where spiritual wellness and mindful productivity meets practical wisdom. If you're craving positivity and want to know how to find the answers within instead of searching endlessly without, then you're in the right place. Get ready to feel supported and inspired. This is the Good Space Podcast. You're listening to the Good Space Podcast, episode number 14. Before we dive in, I want to give my warm appreciation to our reviewer of the week, Taylor Morgan Design. And she says, "The Good Space is one of my new favorite podcasts. It truly is a good space where you combine productivity with spirituality and how they connect. It gives me deeper understanding of myself and my patterns and teaches me how to improve in the best way possible. As an entrepreneur, I've learned how to own my time better and set healthy boundaries for myself and my work. I have learned so much from Francesca over the years following her on social media too, and I'm so excited for her to have a podcast platform to share her knowledge with us even more. Tune into this show if you want to feel good and do better." Thank you so much, Taylor Morgan Design. I felt that deeply and appreciate your kind words. I'm grateful for you and I'm sending you so much love and light. If you want to be highlighted in an upcoming episode and help further the mission of the Good Space, make sure to subscribe and give us a review on Apple Podcasts so I can then highlight your review in an upcoming episode. It only takes a minute. You can pause the episode and come right back. Make sure to screenshot this episode on your phone and tag us on your Instagram story at @FindYourGoodSpace, #TheGoodSpace, to let me know that you're joining in today, as you know that I love to share those screenshots on our stories too. All right, let's begin. Laura Nielsen Denke is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a nationally certified mental health counselor. Before deciding to become a therapist, she was a ballerina in New York City, got a degree in theater arts and communications, founded and directed the Seattle Children's Ballet Company, wrote and directed a children's television special called Adventures on Sinclair Island, and served as the host of a television series called Teens Talk. She also held the position of Executive Vice President of Victory Studios for many years. Ms. Denke wrote the book 10 Secrets for Achieving a Successful Celestial Marriage, 10 Secrets for a Successful Marriage, and Before Your Wedding, a do-it-yourself premarital counseling course. She has over 20 years of experience helping couples improve their marriages and is a popular speaker around the country. Ms. Denke has been married to her husband Conrad for 35 years and has 2 children and 4 grandchildren. Thank you so much, Laura, for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. So before we begin, I would love if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what people come to you for, how you serve people, and how you got to where you are now.
First of all, thanks for having me on your show. I'm delighted to be here. I'm a marriage and family counselor licensed in the state of California, and I'm also a mental health counselor licensed in the state of Washington. And my specialty is relationships, certainly marriages, premarital counseling, also counseling with women and their needs. I deal with people with pornography issues, addiction issues. Of course, the staples are depression, and depression that probably isn't clinical depression, but it's situational depression, and same with anxiety.
That's so interesting. So you have a lot of variety in who you see, but do you ever notice a common thread in all of that, in all of the different issues that people see you for?
Absolutely, Francesca. One of the common threads is self-talk. And I find that most people are so hard on themselves. They might have compassion for friends and everybody else saying, "Oh, no, you're fine. Oh, you did the best you could. Oh my gosh." And they compliment other people, but they don't compliment themselves. And instead, it's as if they have a cat of nine tails that they use on their back to beat themselves up with horrible physical scars, but they're doing this in their mind. And so they leave these mental scars that they inflict upon themselves because they don't know how to do proper self talk.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that's one of the biggest problems that cause all these other issues in people's lives?
Well, naturally, we don't like to blame all of our problems on our parents. However, I find that in most cases, you can directly trace the roots, whether it comes from an ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend, parents. So let me give you an example. When I was a little girl growing up, my sister had straight A's. She was older than I by 4 years. And I had straight A's in grade school, and that was just expected of my sister and me. So when I went to junior high, I had science for the first time. I grew up in the era when they really weren't promoting science like they do these days. Math, yes, but not science. So I had science, and it was so hard. I didn't get it at all. So the first quarter, I came home with my report card, and I had straight A's except one C, and the C was in science. And I cried and cried and cried to my parents, and I said, "I'm so sorry, I'm so stupid, and I'm not as smart as my sister, and woe is me." And the most amazing thing happened. My dad said, "Oh no, Laura, we're proud of you that you got a C, because we know that you did the very best you could. And that's all your mother and I ever ask of you, that you just do the best that you can. And always remember, we're proud of you." Well, guess what that did to my self-talk? Changed everything. I had done the best I could. My parents knew it, so I knew it, so I could have compassion on myself. Well, that became really in my life a marvelous paradigm for my life
Mm.
of not criticizing myself. Why? Because I did the best I could. And if I could just get people to say to themselves, "I'm proud of myself. I did the best I could." And what I learned from that is that never again am I going to go out with a guy who criticizes me and verbally abuses me.
It's interesting. Well, I'm really glad that you brought up the idea of relationships and how they can affect the way that we interact with the world or see the world, because that's exactly what I wanted to dive into with you more is about. I mean, I get a lot of listeners who ask me how to be themselves in a relationship, how to have a sense of self in a relationship, how to love themselves in a relationship. And so, you gave us a little taste into that. But before we jump into that, something I like to ask people who come on the show is, what is your spiritual practice? And does that influence the work that you're doing and how you serve people?
Absolutely, it does. I am a true follower of Jesus Christ. I believe he's our Savior and Redeemer. I'm a Christian, and I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And it is my whole life in every way, shape, and form. It's the foundation that I have, and that belief gives me strength and faith, what I like to call mighty faith in myself and in the Lord, that he has a plan for me. And therefore, I'm on earth to learn and grow. So another reason that I can give myself positive self-talk is because I'm here to learn and grow. And every day is a learning and growing experience. So I can always look back on the mistakes I make and say, "Wow, Laura, I'm proud of you." The same words that my father said all those many years ago when I was 12 years old. "I'm proud of you, Laura. You did the best you could." Because really, We all do the best that we can. And to all your listeners out there, you are doing the very best that you can. So don't beat yourself up. Instead, see the good and just say, I didn't know what I know now. There's another thing that I like to look at, and that is that some people struggle with that. So I like to divide up thoughts, and sometimes I will have people write out their thoughts for an entire week and put them under the categories of: 1, truth; 2, irrational, or maybe it's catastrophic, maybe it's futurizing, anything that is about irrational thought. And the last one I like to call evil inspired. Whether a person is a Christian, a Muslim, whatever religion that they are, there is good and evil. Even literature, all great literature shows good and evil. Shakespeare, whom everyone looks at and says he was truly one of the great writers of the world, he portrayed good and evil. So there are some thoughts that we have that we can just say, no, that's coming from a dark place. I will not have any part of that in my life. If the thought we have is under truth, we can say, well, that is true. I did make a mistake in what I said to my boyfriend or my girlfriend or my husband or my wife or my best friend, but I can change that. And the truth is, I can call them up, say I'm sorry, talk about how to fix it. How can we get along better the next time? So we do have to look at that. There are things that we have to change in our life, but we don't go irrational and say, oh, I'm stupid, I'm stupid, I'm stupid. Well, no, we're not stupid. We're learning, we're growing.
Yeah, that's great. So it sounds like because you're tuned into that spiritual side of yourself, you're better able to help others love themselves and open and be connected to themselves. And the idea of questioning those thoughts, questioning those assumptions we make about ourselves, like, oh, you're not good enough, or oh, you're not worthy enough. Okay, so if someone is in a relationship and they are struggling with loving themselves or having a sense of themselves, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear that question, or when you hear someone ask you how to love themselves more in a relationship?
Well, first of all, I really believe in people's histories. And without a doubt, that person who says, how do I love myself? They have a malady that they have developed over the course of years by how people respond to them. And maybe they've had abusive people, verbally abusive people in their lives. And so they need to be healed. And sometimes we get in relationships because we need healing. And if we're lucky enough to attract someone who also needs some healing, we give each other the kind of love that each other needs. And I can give an example of that from my own personal life. My husband grew up in an abusive home. And I grew up in the perfect home, but I had an abusive boyfriend. So when we met each other, we were like an oasis in the desert, or like we had met at a spa. but it was a mental and spiritual spa for each other. And we listened to each other with unconditional love. And it was a match made in heaven. And over the course of years, we've healed each other of verbally abusive people in the past. So sometimes we have to just recognize, okay, I'm wounded. I was wounded on the battlefield of life, and I need love. And I'm going to have to give it to myself right now, because there isn't a person in my life who can give me the love that I need. And that's, I believe in affirmations, of where you write down positive statements that you say to yourself every single day, and you become that person. And it might be things like, you think about what your gifts and talents are that are given to you from God. You're born with them. I hope I don't embarrass you, Francesca, but one of the gifts and talents you have is you have a gift for people. People love you. You
You're very
automatically
kind.
give them, well, it's true. It's true. And God gave that to you. So if I were giving you an affirmation to say, it would be, God gave me the great gift of love for other people, and I'm good with other people. And you would say that to yourself every day. So people out there who are listening today, think about what your gifts and talents are that you've had since you were a young girl, a young boy, and you know that you have them. You really do. We all know deep down inside certain gifts that we have.
And so that's basically the starting point you would tell someone to kind of see themselves again. Because I know it's so easy to get lost in a relationship. It's easy to be consumed by that person, to have everything be about that person. And so, yeah, that's a great way to just remind yourself of your own qualities that are good within you and your own strengths. So then you can kind of see yourself as an individual person again, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Oh, you said that so well, Francesca, because we can't be so lost in a relationship that we lose ourselves. Those out there that are Christians or of other religions, we're taught that we're supposed to serve others. And when we serve others, we find ourselves. And that's a true statement. But in serving other people, we can't do it to the extent that we don't think of our own self needs. It's like being on an airplane and they tell you the safety rules. And in case of an emergency, the oxygen masks will pop down. But you're first supposed to put on the oxygen mask on yourself and then on your child. So we have to put on our own masks, oxygen masks that are feeding us love, which come in the form of affirmations, and then we can give love to others. And also, when we hear something abusive from another person, it won't penetrate into our soul because it will conflict with the positive affirmation that we have.
Because the affirmation kind of shifts that paradigm, that set of beliefs that you live from. And when something doesn't support that, then it's easier to set that boundary and not allow people or situations to devalue what we're feeling or who we are. And actually, that was kind of my other question is, there are situations where it isn't a healthy relationship, or there are signs and things telling you that this is not right for you, because there's a difference, I think, between being so wrapped up in the person and you're in love and, you're in a healthy, somewhat healthy relationship, because obviously codependency is not super healthy, but I feel like you can learn your way out of that. And I feel like marriage does such a great job of that, where you combine your life with someone and then you feel like, who am I? Like, who am I as a person? And you kind of have to like figure that out. But like, what is the line for you? Like, how would someone know that the relationship I'm in is not only consuming, but it's actually bad for me and it's not a good situation, versus I just need to love myself and find my sense of self again, and then we're okay and it's good?
That is a good question. It's a profound question, and it's difficult on a broad spectrum to give one answer for everybody because it really is quite individual. So here's the universal answer. The universal answer is that if you feel you're in a relationship that's verbally abusive, obviously physical abuse is out, always out. And anyone who out there listening who may be in a physically abusive relationship, get out now. There are battered women's places to go for free, and you can get free counseling and get the help that you need. Verbal abuse is a lot harder to figure out. So one thing, again, I'm very big on monitoring our lives individually. So you could start keeping a log of the negative things that you hear your love interests say each day versus the positives they say and how they say it. If they make remarks like, You don't care about me. You never care about me. It's all about you. You are so narcissistic. Everything's about you. Why did you make this meal? You know that I don't like these foods. How could you do that? You don't care about me. It's all your fault that this happened. It's your fault that we're failing. You're destroying our relationship. In other words, they never take any responsibility themselves. They don't say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. What did I say that hurt you? Oh my gosh, please forgive me. I did not mean to. Let's talk about this for a second. This is what I was meaning. And the other person could say, oh, okay, I'm sorry too. Many years ago, there was a movie called Love is Never Having to Say You're Sorry. It was called Love Story, but the poster was Love is Never Having to Say You're Sorry. Oh my gosh, that is so not true. True love is being able to say, I'm sorry right away. And how could I have said that better? What would you like me to do in the future to give you the kind of love that you need? Another way to say things is to always let a person off the hook and think the best of them. If you're in a relationship that is going to last forever, which we all want to be in that kind, then you would assume the best of your love interest. And that love interest, if you hurt their feelings, would say, honey, sweetheart, hey, babe, I know you didn't mean to hurt me just then. Can we talk about what you just said? Because I just really felt hurt. And the other person is not going to be defensive. A verbally abusive person would just say, oh, get over it. What's your problem? You're too sensitive. That's verbally abusive and someone who doesn't really care about you.
Yeah.
Does that help?
It does help. And I feel like it opens a can of worm of questions in my head. So hopefully I'm picking the right ones to ask. But I think my mind goes to clearly relationships make us sensitive. I feel like a lot of us feel sensitive. We feel vulnerable. And that vulnerability is probably what triggers those hurts and those wounds that cause those type of things to be said. And it's just amazing how it can seem so intricate, but at the same time, yeah, like it's just really interesting to think about relationships in that way. So if someone were in a relationship and feeling like I have no sense of self, or I feel like I lost who I am and I don't know what to do, we start with affirmations, reminding yourself of who you are. Is there anything else that you would recommend they practice? Or I remember when I was dating, and when you really are in love with someone, or just obsessive almost, and maybe this is immaturity, but you like, how do you tell yourself, oh, go to an exercise class, or oh, start having your own life again? Like, what is it about that is so hard to do? Like, what would you suggest people to do when they do want to become themselves again, or a separate person again?
That is a good question. First of all, women have a tendency to do everything for the man. They want the man. They really do. They want that love from him. And so they'll do anything to please the man. Oh, you go golfing? Okay, I'll learn to golf so that I can be with you. You go running every day. Oh, yeah, I'll learn to be a runner because I want to be with you. And they put their own hobbies and interests aside, anything to be with the guy. Well, some of that is a good thing, but some of it is not, because we have to be ourselves. For example, I used to be a ballet dancer many years ago. And so I have to give myself a ballet lesson every day for at least a half hour. That's my goal. Not every day, 5 days a week. And that's my thing. It has nothing to do with my husband. But that's something that I'm committed to keep up. And we can't lose ourselves. If we're not doing the things that we dearly love ourselves, there's something wrong with the picture. And if someone is out there with this issue of where they no longer are doing the things that they love, maybe it's art, where they're painting for an hour a day, or playing the piano an hour a day. We have to do what we love. And I can guarantee the guys aren't going to stop doing what they love to do.
Yeah.
They're still going to do their exercise or whatever. But part of this comes from not dating properly.
Mm. What does that mean?
Well, in this day and age, there's a tendency to hang out. And in hanging out, that means that you're hanging out at the guy's house and doing whatever he wants to do,
Interesting.
rather than destination dating. And we need to bring that back. Many, many girls, especially, do not insist that they do activities together. That's how you really get to know someone.
Interesting. So how does that work, or how would that look like?
Okay, let's say that the girl says, "Oh, you golf? Okay, I'll learn golfing with you." Or maybe it's skiing. "Oh, you ski." Let's say that they live in Colorado or Utah where skiing is so popular. They say, "Oh, I'd like to learn to ski." Well, a really good guy would say, "Great, I'll teach you. That'd be so cool if you'd learn that." And so he'd either pay for a beginner lesson for her and then go skiing with her on the bunny slope, and share those moments with her until she becomes a really good skier. Oh, that'd be a great partner. That's someone that cares about her development. And it also says, wow, that guy would be a great partner because he's about mutual enjoyment together. Then there's the other kind of guy that says, "Well, I don't really want to go skiing with you because you're way far behind me. I do helicopter skiing. I wouldn't be satisfied skiing with you." Okay, what does that say to the person? And what does that say about him? That he's all about his own needs when she could easily learn how. So when my husband and I first got married, we agreed that I would teach my husband how to do ballroom dancing and he would teach me how to play the guitar.
That's so cute.
So, and that was a very positive thing. And it's about making mutual goals together. So if a guy is selfish, or a girls are like that too. They can be very
Yes.
selfish.
Yes.
But there are signs. Destination dating is learning about a person's personality and what kind of a partner they would be.
Yes. So basically what I'm hearing is, which by the way, those are all amazing visuals and examples to help kind of make tangible these concepts. But what I'm also hearing is that dating shouldn't just be about, I want the guy to just love me and be around me and I want to be obsessed with him. It's more like, no, you are wonderful and amazing and you should be asking these questions. You should be seeing what the partnership material is. You should be actively thinking. So it's basically like you have to value yourself in order to get to the place where you see it as a partnership and you actually put that person to the test and see if they're someone you can be with, going on those destination dates. I don't know if I'm explaining myself correctly, but it just seems like there has to be a sense of love and value for yourself first. So then that way you don't feel like you need to fulfill yourself in someone else, and you can actually, I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly, but I'm piecing together what you're saying. Tell me if that makes sense or not, or if there's anything to run with on that.
No, it makes total sense, Francesca, because first of all, we have to know ourselves and what are our needs. We each have different needs. That's why there are so many personality types. That's why the world is filled with so many unique people. Some people think that opposites attract. Well, they do. And it's kind of exciting, but they make for bad partners. We
Interesting.
need partners that have our same goals, have our same likes and dislikes. Like, for example, an atheist that marries a very devout Catholic, it's going to end in divorce.
Yeah. And I mean, there are probably some exceptions, but overall, it makes it much harder, right? Or is
Yeah,
it?
yeah. No, that's right. And a classic example is a story of one of my clients that the atheist was a devout golfer on Sundays. And my client was a Catholic who went to Mass every Sunday. They get married, and he finds a lady on the golf course who's single, who golfs every Sunday, is also an atheist, and they end up having an affair.
Wow.
Because the bottom line is that we really do want someone that shares our interests. I actually wrote a book that is called Don't Get Engaged Until You Read This Book. And it focuses on principles about first knowing who and what you are and what your needs are.
I love that.
And then it focuses on how to find that in another person. So I think oftentimes people, especially in this day and age, are infatuated with someone who's attractive, and they'll start having an intimate relationship right away because they want that person so much. Well, what happens is the sexual relationship masks what their real needs are, and it pretty much stops the progression in getting to know a person mentally and spiritually.
Wow. That hit home so well. And as a side note, my husband and I used your book before we got married, and we talk about it to everyone because you really ask people ask the right questions. And for example, what do you envision financially? What do you envision for your kids? How do you want to raise them? All these little things that we would never think to discuss with each other, but that would actually put a block or an obstacle in our marriage if it was completely different from each other. And thankfully, we went through all the questions and we were pretty much aligned on everything. And so we often will say, oh, thank goodness we took that because we know that we align with this, or like there was no question. And so I encourage anyone listening, even if you're not dating someone, and tell me if I'm wrong, get this book, because if you find yourself being lost in a relationship or wondering what it is that you need, you might not even know what you need. You need to figure it out. And I think that your book is an excellent way of doing that. So this is a great tool to figure that out. And what inspired you to create that book?
Because in my practice, I see so many people that didn't know themselves before they got married, people who didn't have any clue how to find a person that would be compatible with them. Again, they went for the obvious, oh, I'm attracted to that person, I'm in love, the infatuation. But they didn't do the homework that they needed to do. And thank you so much for recommending my book, because anyone who is looking for a partner should buy the book and start it themselves, because it's in 4 parts. Part 1 is knowing who and what you are and what your needs are. And everyone should do that first and foremost, so that they have an idea when they're dating if that person really would make a long-time partner. We live in a disposable day and age. And in fact, the divorce rate is so high. And I believe in Europe, it's 78% of all marriages get divorced. And some people say, well, how can that be when so many of them live together first? Well, it's very simple. It's because they still are not cracking the surface of their relationship. And girls especially are on their best behavior, or even guys at first. And then when they decide to get married, they say, oh, okay, now I can be myself.
That's interesting.
Isn't that funny?
That's really funny.
I know. But they'll uncover things that they had no idea of. Recently, one of my clients asked me, well, I could never get married without having sex first. And I said, oh, really? Yeah. And I said, well, what do you learn from that? And he said, well, I find out if it's good or not. Oh, well, what makes for good sex? Well, you just do, all is great. And I said, well, you know what? You don't really know what good sex is. Good sex is where you're both givers and you both want to make the other person happy in the relationship, in the sexual relationship. And you can find that out in dating just by how a person acts on the date. One time I went on a date to a museum in New York City. I was living in New York City at the time, and I was a choreographer dancer way before I was a marriage and family therapist and mental health counselor. And I went to a museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And at the time, I was only 21. I had never studied art. I didn't know anything about art. And I was dating this guy that I would have married him on the first date if he had said to me, will you marry me? Because he was so handsome. He was a member of my church. And I was infatuated. But on the first date of him taking me to the museum, I soon learned that he would never be a giver, because as we went through the museum, I didn't know anything about art, and he would say, we'd look at different pieces of art and he'd say, oh, what do you think about that? Well, I didn't even have the vocabulary to know how to think about art. I didn't even know that I could have an opinion without knowing anything about art. I mean, I could say, ooh, that is so cool. I like the colors in that. And I wonder what that lady is thinking. I didn't know how to do anything like that. Okay. And he didn't help. I would say, oh, it's interesting. And at the end of the date, he said, is that all you could say? Is that's interesting? Well, he could have taught me about art. And when I met my husband, he was so wonderful. If I didn't know something, he'd help me. He'd teach me. And that's a giver. We teach each other in a kind, loving way so that we can share with each other. We learn from each other. That's the key, is that in dating, you find out in all the experiences that you have with each other. Let's say you decide to make a meal together. You go and you buy the groceries and you help each other cook. And if one person doesn't know how, the other one says, oh, would you like me to show you to do that? Yes, please, please. And it's about working with each other.
Ooh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that and the example as well. I think it's super easy for us, especially when we're not properly taught, because sometimes we don't have a marriage to look towards or experiences to look towards that tell us how to navigate relationships and our own selves. And what you shared is so helpful, so valuable. And I know that the people listening are going to really appreciate your input and your insights. So Laura, thank you so much for chatting with me. I feel like we could have a whole series on this, and this is just like breaking the ice, but you have so much knowledge and just experience and wisdom, and I appreciate you coming on here. So if anyone wants to find you, what is the best way to do that?
They can find me at Laura Denke, www.lauradenke.com.
LAURAD as in dog, EN as in Nancy, KE.
That is correct. And they're welcome to email me if they'd like to directly, which is Laura, LAURA, at victorystudios with an S on the end.com.
Oh, Laura, that's so wonderful. You're so great. Well, thank you again. And I will have a link to your book in the show notes. So if you're interested in buying that, go to the show notes. And I hope that we can chat again soon in the future. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a delight to be on your show. You're a terrific talk show host. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time for an affirmation. I feel an expansive, warm, never-ending love for myself. I allow myself to be open in close relationships because my trust lies in the foundation of God, universe, and through that powerful energy, I am always safe and whole, regardless of how others deal with their own wounds. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview. Take a look at the show notes if you want to read the affirmation you just heard, connect with Laura, and links to everything we mentioned. If you learned something new today, share a screenshot of the episode with your takeaway on Instagram and tag @FindYourGoodSpace. I love resharing. If you think other people would benefit from this information, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. See you soon.